Hey there, John.
Good evening. How are you?
Okay, all right. How about yourself?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for asking.
Excellent.
Hope the weather's a little cooler where everybody is than it is in Dallas, Texas.
Ah,
We'll get started here about 1 minute after 7 Dallas time, which is 1 minute wherever you all are. My normal helper Keith Hooper is out to dinner with his wife, so bear with me. I have to admit people and as we start the call, so just bear with me as we go in here. Well, it's my great privilege tonight to welcome not only my tremendous interpreter and friend and downline, Heidi Sandoval, to the call. Hola, Heidi.
Hello, how are you? Gracias a todos por estar aquí y thank you, John, for inviting me.
Thank you for being here, Heidi, and thank you for translating as well. And John Molson. John Molson, let me share a little bit about John's background, and I can probably go on a half hour just about who John is, but I won't do that because what he has to say is incredibly valuable, and I want you to get every bit of the meat that you can from this call tonight. John Molson is the research ambassador for Immunotech Research. He was one of the founding people of Immunotech Research. He and a gentleman named Chuck Roberts and a gentleman named Dieter Beer were the three people who had the wisdom to recognize the brilliance of this product way back some 27 years ago. And as a result of that, they formed a company called Immunotech that today, of course, is owned by Mauricio Domenzane and his team. But they were the guys 26 years ago, 27 years ago that recognized how important this product was. Heidi, go ahead with that, and I'll add a couple of things on John. Heidi, did you mute yourself? Oh,
I'm sorry. I didn't want to make this. I'm sorry. I will repeat it. John Monson es nuestro embajador en ciencia e investigación en nuestra empresa y él tiene desde hace 27 años pues el objetivo de investigar y llevar nuestros productos en Inmunotech con un gran respaldo científico.
Now, John has not only been the research ambassador, but he literally went to work every day with Dr. Bunos for many, many years. So, who better to learn about Immunical from than Dr. Bunos? That's point one. Point two, John is a product of the product. John has had not only his own results with the product, he's raised a son who has played in the National Football League. He himself is a world-class athlete, continues to train at a very high level in his 60 plus year age range, continues to be at the gym constantly training, working, and all of that, and uses Immunical for recovery and for strength gain. So he's literally a product of the product. This product has been a huge part of his life. Go ahead, Ed.
Bueno, John Molson no solamente es el embajador de nuestra empresa, sino que también es producto del producto porque él, como su hijo, quienes han formado parte de grandes ligas de hockey y también de otras áreas, en el caso de John, de ciclismo. Y él todavía entrena en el gimnasio, así que él toma el producto todos los días. Por eso podemos decir que John Molson es producto del producto.
John comes also, last couple of notes on John, and then we're going to get into talking to him. John comes from a very well respected family in the province of Quebec, Canada. Amongst other things, his family has not only been in business since the late 1700s in that country, but they've also owned one of the most famous sports franchises in the world, the Montreal Canadiens hockey team, been involved with sponsorship of athletic events. And there also have been philanthropists. They've helped out the Montreal Teaching Hospital along the way, as well as many other things. So they're just a great family, and we are honored to have John be part of Immunotech.
Y también podemos mencionar de John Molson que él viene de una familia muy reconocida en Quebec. Ellos, aparte de tener más de 27,000 negocios en todo Canadá, en Montreal, pues también ha formado parte de la familia atlética deportista de su país, de este país de Canadá, y también pues han trabajado en diferentes áreas en hospitales con mucho éxito.
So, Heidi, let's start here in terms of asking John questions. So I'll say it in English, you say it in Spanish, and then John will answer in English, and you can answer in Spanish or translate in Spanish. So, John, welcome to the call, my friend.
Thank you very much.
So, John, let's start with the first question. Basic question about research. When we say the word, what does it mean in practical terms?
Ah,
Well,
en palabras cortas, vamos a hacerte la primera pregunta, John. ¿Qué es en términos prácticos la palabra investigación para ti?
yeah, it's a very broad term, but in simple terms, it means answering questions using the scientific method. So you, as a scientist, Dr. Droog, Dr. Kamshav, and Dr. Baruchel developed, in this case, a hypothesis about how Immunical may act or the mechanism of action. And so you set up a series of experiments to test that hypothesis. And sometimes your hypothesis is correct, sometimes it's wrong. And so you have to set up other experiments. And so, in other words, in this case, failure is success many times because failure teaches you where to go in terms of, your thinking, the direction, et cetera, et cetera.
Bueno, para mí el término de investigación es muy valioso y en términos simples, pues es que contesta muchas de nuestras dudas, porque al utilizar el método científico podemos también encontrar respuestas. Y bueno, a veces vamos a tener eh, fallas en las hipótesis que nos planteamos o en las teorías que decimos, pero estas fallas también, estas, estas,
Let me mute that person. Okay, there we go. Sorry, Heidi.
yeah, estas fallas también nos van a enseñar la diferencia o nos van a poder enseñar cómo llegar correctamente al lugar que queremos llegar. Eso es básicamente lo que significa la investigación para mí.
Second question, John. When we look at Immunitech's 85 publications, what does that body of work constitute?
Well, the way I would characterize this, it's a history of researchers studying and asking questions, certain hypotheses about mechanism of action. And it constitutes basic science. So, initially, when they were trying to understand the mechanism of action, they looked at it in what are called cell cultures. Then they moved on to small animal studies and then clinical studies. And in that as well, Dr. Bunos wrote what are called medical hypotheses. So he wrote stories about, different aspects of Immunical scientifically. So that 85, those 85 publications, it takes you from the very beginning. If you read those early studies, the way they wrote those studies and the way the information was generated, you understood that they were grasping for, trying to find out exactly why was Immunical behaving in this way? Why was it improving the immune system of these mice? They didn't understand it mechanistically. And so, they had to run these different studies looking at different pathologies to finally understand the mechanism. But it's a scientific history of the development of Immunical.
Heidi? Oh, you're muted again, Heidi.
Am I okay? Can you hear
Yes,
me?
you're good. You're good. Good.
Ok. La pregunta de John Soleder fue en las 85 publicaciones que tenemos en Immunotech, ¿Qué significa tener todo este, pues, contexto de 85 publicaciones para John Molson? Y John Molson nos responde, pues, básicamente que 85 publicaciones como estas representan la historia de la investigación en la que se plantearon dudas, hubo dudas y hubo hipótesis y estas fueron estudiadas y fueron refutadas, fueron también contestadas em, con la ciencia, con los básicos de la ciencia, que es el método científico. Y también nos están ayudando estos 85 documentos a entender, a tratar de entender cómo es que nuestro producto en la ciencia está funcionando y cómo al ponerlo en práctica o al ponerlo a prueba en estudios clínicos, también se podían ver historias médicas. También nos comenta que la ciencia en el inmunocal es muy importante porque también pudieron encontrar y deducir cómo es que el inmunocal fue usado en diferentes patologías y cómo es que funcionaba o se comportaba de una o de otra forma para poder tener mejores resultados con el inmunocal. Esto es básicamente lo que nos comenta John Moss.
Third question, John. When you began the BRAIN initiative around 2011, why did you start with basic science work?
Yeah, so this goes to the heart of what we were talking about earlier about research. You know, when we started the company, Dr. Bunos, part of what he gave me to read was the effect of NAC or antioxidants on neurodegenerative diseases. And so we had theories about how immunocal could possibly act, but we had no concrete information. So we had to understand from a basic science standpoint, what did immunocal actually do to brain cells that were subjected to different stressors, and these stressors were different types of chemicals. So we started to work with scientists at the University of Denver, Dr. Dan Linsman, who set up these basic science studies. And from these cell cultures, we understood that immunocal had a neuroprotective effect. So it was actually protecting these cells from these different stressors. And so, based on that initial information, it looked very promising, and it said to me, okay, it's worth the risk, and it's a good investment to progress further with other studies.
Ok, la pregunta de John fue ¿cómo es que empezó o cómo es que inició los estudios del inmunocal en el 2011 sobre el cerebro y su comportamiento? ¿Por qué, dice, por qué empezaron estos trabajos de estudio científico en el cerebro? Y John Molson nos contesta que, bueno, esta es una de las partes difíciles
Ahí está Heidi Sandoval.
Sí, ¿puede poner su micrófono en silencio, por favor? Gracias. Bueno, retomo. Lo difícil de esta parte de la investigación es que tenían que ver, y él lo comentó con el doctor Bonus, es que ellos tenían que ver cómo es que perdón, se me fue la última palabra, pero estaban haciendo antítesis o test en el cerebro y tenían muy poca información de cómo actuaba el inmunocal en el cerebro. Y empezaron a hacer estudios y pruebas en uno de los lugares, hospitales de Denver, y en empezaron a encontrar que el inmunocal tenía una protección o protegía las células del cerebro.
Question 4, John. Could you take us through the actual process of setting up a study and how the various approval processes take place in creating a study?
Sure. So it's interesting because you have to think in terms of three kind of macro influences. One is the regulatory environment, which essentially are rules set up by the Canadian government and the FDA in terms of what you can say. So that is the governor. The second one is how your product acts. So we have a good understanding of how Immunical acts. And the third one is basically, what's the particular area of interest that we're looking at? So whether it's muscle function, brain, etc. And so bringing those three things together, and the most recent one I did was in brain health. So, based on what I was reading and based on all the research we had done and based on what we'd achieved with Dr. Linsman, I wanted to do a study in brain health, particularly in looking at the effect of Immunical in the aging brain and how it may help the aging brain. So what I bumped up against was there was no medical definition of a healthy brain. There was only like medical definitions of unhealthy brain. So I had to pick a subject, and in this case, it was mild cognitive impairment, as a particular aspect of unhealthy brain aging to study, to see, whether we could improve that. And then once I found the subject, then it was a case of looking at the different centers that may have the capacity to do this. So it was. Can you ask that person to mute?
Yeah. Yeah. Please mute everybody. Okay, I think we're good, John.
Yeah. So in this case, I started looking in the United States at like 3 or 4 different centers. And the reason I started in the States was because they had a new project that was funded by the U.S. government, where it's called the Connectome Project, and it was essentially a number of states that were doing what's called brain imaging, and within this brain imaging, it allowed them to measure certain endpoints, one of which was glutathione. So I started in the States, and I couldn't find the right center, and then through my connections in Montreal, I found out the Neuro Institute in Montreal could do that brain imaging. So we collaborated with the Montreal General Hospital, specifically the Jewish General Hospital and the Neuro, to set up a study. Now, what this entailed is the principal investigator of the study, he wrote the protocol. Then we had to get the protocol approved by internal review boards. In parallel to that, we had to submit the protocol to the Canadian government to get the approvals from the Canadian government, because this was a clinical trial. And once that was all set up, then we had to produce products specifically, because you don't use commercial product, you have to have specific packaging for this study. And once that was all done, then the study started essentially. So that's kind of a behind-the-scenes look of what goes into conceptually doing this. Now, the only reason I can do this is because somebody that's worked with me for the last 14 years is a young lady who ran studies for pharma companies. And she's an MBA, she's a master in science. And so, I came in with the conceptual ideas of what we would look at, and she essentially was behind me setting up all the practical aspects, because you can't believe the amount of paperwork that's required to set one of these studies up. So that's how I was able to do it.
Okay. I will try to say everything that John Molson said, but may I ask you some questions if I don't
Sure,
get
yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Bueno, la pregunta de John aquí es, ¿cómo es que fueron estableciendo el proceso de estudio y obteniendo estas pues patentes y aprobaciones de Immunocal o el producto para que se hiciera pues efectivo y se pudiera utilizar? La respuesta de John Molson es que empezó, pues hay 3 cosas importantes que entender aquí que se tenían que obtener. Y la primera es la aceptación gubernamental para que se pudiera llevar a cabo el inmunocal. La segunda es saber cómo actúa el producto en todos los aspectos y también cómo es que funciona el producto principalmente en la parte muscular. Todo esto empezó a raíz de saber o estar investigando la salud principalmente del cerebro y empezaron al investigar toda esta información, encontraban principalmente que había mucha definición de lo que era un cerebro enfermo, pero no había información de lo que era un cerebro sano. Cómo obtenerlo, cómo ayudar a que el envejecimiento de nuestro cerebro fuera saludable y no de una manera pues incorrecta o no sana, como él lo menciona. Pues encontraron, él se dio a la tarea de empezar a buscar centros donde se estuviera haciendo este tipo de investigación. John, could you repeat me the name of the centers that you visited or you were researching
Sure.
about this healthy information or definition of the brain?
Yeah. So the centers that typically what I do, and I wanted to explain this as well, that when I'm looking at different centers in the United States, different physicians, scientists, I go and do a search on PubMed, which is a government site that has all the different scientific information of almost any subject, because I want to look at the experience of these scientists. So I'll let you translate that.
Ok. Bueno, él, la pregunta que le hacía es, ¿en dónde fue donde investigó primero? Me comenta que él empezó a buscar en diferentes centros en Estados Unidos, donde él encontró evidencia científica y uno de estos lugares en donde él encontró es uno que es muy común ya para nosotros, se llama PubMed.gov, pues ahora en .gov. PubMed él encontró muchos estudios científicos que hablaban sobre el tema.
Yeah.
También, yes.
Go ahead. So
Go ahead.
the Montreal Neuro, where the imaging is done, is world famous, and the scientists involved in this study basically provide advice to the Canadian government and provincial governments in Canada on unhealthy brain aging. So we have some of the top experts in North America working on this project.
Así que en Montreal también había un centro neurológico que estaba involucrado en todo este tipo de estudios y ayudaron muchísimo para que este proyecto se llevara a cabo con el inmunocal.
Yeah, and a big restriction was the fact that this is the new technology for imaging the brain and measuring these different endpoints such as glutathione. So I was restricted in terms of what centers in North America had the particular technology. So I had to combine the technology with the experience of these investigators, and I was able to find that in Montreal, which is very convenient because we were able to go meet the investigators, meet the people doing the imaging, and so we're able to keep close tabs on the trial.
Y cuando él empezó a hacer esta investigación de cómo tener un cerebro sano, saludable, pues empezaron a buscar en Estados Unidos, pero también a compaginar a estos científicos, tanto en Canadá como en Estados Unidos, para que pudieran tener mejores resultados de lo que él se estaba buscando, que era tener información o documentos, aprobaciones que hablaran sobre la salud, un cerebro saludable.
So the reason that we picked mild cognitive impairment is with a healthy brain, glutathione levels are typically normal. In the unhealthy brain, glutathione levels are low. So you want to have a starting point where glutathione levels are low. Theoretically, you give these people immunical, it normalizes glutathione, which has an effect on their behavior, their memory. And so these are the things that we're looking at.
Y aquí lo que descubrimos con esta sinergia es que cuando el glutatión lo tenemos en un nivel bajo, vamos a tener un cerebro enfermo. Y cuando tenemos el glutatión en condiciones óptimas, vamos a tener un cerebro saludable. Y por ello es que tenemos bastante conocimiento de cómo es que el glutatión es importante para los problemas como la falta de memoria o otras enfermedades.
So, I'll tell you why a lot of companies don't do this. Number one, they don't have a product that works properly. But number two, we started this study back in 2017. We probably started talking about it 3 to 4 years earlier, and we spent, close to a couple $100,000 in initial scientific work to convince these investigators that Immunical is worth giving a shot. So, now we're at the point where all the information is with the statistician, and we're doing what are called statistical queries, and from that, a paper will be written. But that's, you're talking a huge investment and a lot of time, and many companies, don't want to go through that process or don't have a product that acts consistently. And so this is what's unique about Immunitech is we're willing to commit the funds, and we have a lot of confidence in Immunical if you set up the right study and ask the right questions.
Y bueno, al hacer esta investigación sobre el inmunocal, donde tuvimos que cubrir las expectativas gubernamentales y también ver cómo es que está funcionando el producto, los estudios que se han hecho desde el 2011 en respecto a un cerebro saludable y toda esta sinergia que hemos buscado dentro de los científicos para que nos ayuden a encontrar cómo es que Inmunocal puede ayudar en estas situaciones o en este aspecto específicamente del cerebro, es que, bueno, se han tenido que invertir muchos millones de dólares y se han tenido que realizar también muchas, lo que le llaman estadísticas, donde son estudios que nos permiten ver con otros productos que contraponerlos para saber cómo es que están funcionando. Pero hasta el día de hoy no hay un producto que nos pueda dar los resultados que estamos buscando. Y tenemos mucha fe y la certeza de que Inmunocal sí lo tiene porque estamos dedicando muchos esfuerzos económicos y científicos a descubrir y a encontrar cómo es que Inmunocal puede funcionar mejor en un cerebro saludable.
Another important way to interpret this information from the very beginning is that all these different scientific studies we've done is almost a secondary method of quality control. So, we set up these studies. We have no control on the results, and we have no control on the data generated. That's all handled by the investigators. So, from the very beginning, you've had Immunical each year subjected to 1, 2, 3, 4 studies with different scientists around North America. And, the data is there for everybody to see. So you have a product that has acted consistently and deliberate since, 1978. And from when we formed the company, initially in 1996, started commercializing in 1997, we have all these studies that attest to how Immunical performs. And so the production is consistent, the quality control is consistent, and we consistently show that there's an effect on glutathione and an effect on a particular health target or performance.
Y bueno, desde que empezamos, bueno, sabemos que no se tiene un control en los resultados. Y empezamos con dos métodos diferentes. Y en Inmunocal se hicieron no solo uno, dos, tres o cuatro estudios por diferentes científicos. Pero desde que se ha empezado a hacer estos estudios, hemos encontrado que desde que se formó la empresa, que en 1996 y 97, es que hemos encontrado que en Inmunocal el glutatión es una pieza clave para las investigaciones que estamos realizando sobre el cerebro y que además de eso tenemos certeza de que el control en los estudios de Inmunocal ha sido consistente y también hemos podido ver resultados consistentes, por eso estamos tan seguros y tan confiados en que Inmunocal tiene excelentes resultados.
Another thing too that I want to point out, many companies say wrongly that my product raises glutathione, so it does the same thing as Unical. That couldn't be further from the truth. And that's one of the most important reasons why you do research to characterize what your product does.
Cuando también hemos visto que muchas compañías recientemente hablan de que venden o promueven glutatión como tal, pero el glutatión como tal nunca va a ser igual que Inmunocal. ¿Por qué? Porque la investigación científica que hay detrás de Inmunotech no es lo mismo que dar el glutatión simple y sencillamente.
Okay, John, we can move on to the next question.
All right, great. Well, that was great stuff, folks. Hopefully you're taking notes and we are videoing this and we'll tell you how to get the video afterwards. Anyway, John, last major question for tonight. You know, we're kind of going to switch gears a little bit and let's talk about some of the researchers that have worked on Immunical through the years. You know, we see papers and we see these names that are associated with the product, in some cases going back to 1978. Tell us about some of these folks.
Well, the first scientist is a very special reason that I picked him, because when Dr. Bunos was starting his research many years ago, this scientist was working in the same hospital as Dr. Bunos and was down the hall from Dr. Bunos and was friends with Dr. Bunos. And Dr. Bunos came into his laboratory and was talking. Can we cut those?
Yeah, let me, hold on a minute, John. Okay.
¿Puede poner, por favor,
Okay.
sus micrófonos en silencio?
Got it. I'm hitting mute. It's not muting. There we go. Okay. Sorry, John.
Yeah. So, as I said, there's a very special reason I picked this first gentleman. And I've had the pleasure of working with him. He was working down the hall from Dr. Bunos as a young scientist at the Montreal General Hospital. And
Mark, ¿puedes silenciar tu micrófono, por favor? José Aguilar, ¿puedes, por favor, silenciar tu micrófono, por favor?
So he was working down the hall from Dr. Bunos. And Dr. Bunos came into his office and he started talking about his experiments that he was running. And at the time, he didn't understand why this particular protein was performing the way it was and was having an effect on the mice. And, you know, he described what he was seeing, and Dr. Battis said, you should look at glutathione. So this is the man that pointed Dr. Bunos in the direction of glutathione cysteine. He's the deputy director and senior investigator of the Lady Davis Institute, one of the top institutes in Canada. He's the Minda Devensker Professor of Oncology at McGill University, director of the Siegel Cancer Center, Jewish General Hospital. And he was in charge of the translational research department. So in essence, what that means is they take basic science, basic research, and essentially bring it all the way to clinical application. And he was responsible for that at the Montreal General Hospital. So he's a very famous oncologist in Canada. You know, he's funded by all the different agencies around North America, and his name is on one of the papers with Dr. Bunos.
Let me just jump in here for 1 second, Heidi, before you go. That's Dr. Gerald Batiste. We had some noise and some people entering. Apologize for that. I think we got everybody muted, hopefully. But that's Dr. Gerald Batiste is who John was referring to there. So Heidi, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Bueno, la pregunta que nos hace John Solider o le hace a John Monson es, cambiando un poquito sobre los temas de inmunoteca e inmunocal, ¿nos podrías hablar un poco sobre los investigadores que están en la lista de aquellos que han tenido parte en nuestra empresa y que han publicado algo sobre el inmunocal? Y pues uno de los primeros que está mencionando se llama el doctor Gerald Batiste, y él, bueno, es un investigador que conoció al doctor Bonus, era amigo de él, y que también conoció, se presentó a John Molson, y él estaba trabajando con el doctor Bonus. Empezaron a trabajar. El doctor Batiste era un joven científico, y un día el doctor Bonus llegó a su oficina y le habló del experimento que estaba haciendo, y aunque el doctor Batiste no entendía muy bien lo que la proteína estaba, lo que estaba tratando de hacer con la proteína y sus efectos, el doctor Batiste fue aquel que le dirigió o lo direccionó hacia el estudio del glutatión en esta proteína. Y él también estuvo a cargo de esta transición de llevar un proyecto de experimental, eh, pues que habían probado con los ratones, llevarlo de la investigación básica a la investigación clínica, lo cual es muy importante porque él como oncólogo, porque él es oncólogo, él es ahorita director e investigador senior del Instituto Lady Davis, y también estuvo en la Universidad de McGill como profesor de oncología, y también ha estado en el Hospital Judío General de Cáncer en Segal, y también tiene pues este centro de investigación transicional, en el cual él pues ha escrito muchos de los textos que han explicado cómo el glutatión en la oncología funciona muy bien. Y bueno, ha hablado del inmunocal.
And John, Dr. Drobe, tell us about Dr. Drobe.
Well, Dr. Drobe was the first person in the world to study glutathione in a living organism. He was recognized as a redox pioneer because he was published as first author in an article on antioxidant-redox biology that was cited more than 2,000 times, and over 10 articles that have been cited more than 100 times. He was the head of the immunochemistry division of the German National Cancer Institute before mandatory retirement at age 65. And notwithstanding offers from pharma companies all over the world, Dr. Drobe accepted the position at Immunotech as its chief science officer with the objective of continuing his research in cancer and aging using Immunocal as a study product. Now, when we formed the company, you know, as I say, Dr. Bunos gave me all these different articles to read, all these different authors to follow. And I remember him talking about Dr. Drobe in revered terms. I mean, he was one of the scientists that Dr. Bunos really looked up to. And so, you know, the fact that we had the opportunity to bring this man over from Germany and, you know, be the chief science officer at Immunotech versus, you know, the offers from all these other pharma companies says everything about the quality of Immunocal and the quality of our science and the, you know, the importance of the scientific studies that we're able to do under him.
Bueno, el doctor Wolfsbach es reconocido por ser pionero en el efecto redox, y porque él ha publicado como autor los primeros artículos sobre la biología redox o antioxidante, y también ha sido citado en más de 2000 veces en más de 10 artículos en los que han sido citados. También él fue el jefe de la división química de de inmunología, perdón, de inmunología en el Instituto de Cáncer, el Instituto Nacional de Cáncer de Alemania. Y antes de que se emitiera la ley de que se tenían que retirar como científicos a los 65 años, y también él fue uno de los que rechazó muchos eh, ofertas de las compañías farmacéuticas alrededor no rechazó, sino que estuvo en diferentes farmacéuticas, disculpen, en diferentes farmacéuticas, compañías farmacéuticas en todo el mundo. Y el doctor Drog aceptó la posición en Immunotech de ser el jefe de ciencia. Y pues tuvo como objetivo principal el continuar la investigación sobre el cáncer y sobre el envejecimiento utilizando el inmunocal como un producto de estudio. También nos comenta John Molson que él es un científico de los más confiables que ha conocido, porque él estuvo estudiando y trabajando con el doctor Bonus. Y cuando el doctor Bonus le dio a John Molson los artículos del doctor Rock para leer, que eran muchos, él se dio cuenta de que era un científico dedicado a la calidad. La calidad y que también, bueno, pues él tenía eh, al tener este puesto de jefe en Immunotech, él lo que más buscó fue la calidad, no solo en el producto de Inmunocal, sino en la ciencia detrás de nuestro producto.
And how about
Heidi, I
Dr.
don't know, but he was the first to study glutathione in a living organism.
Y también quiere mencionar que fue el primero en estudiar el glutatión en un organismo vivo.
Then the last one I chose, there was many, was Dr. Phil Gold. And Dr. Phil Gold was the Douglas G. Cameron Professor of Medicine and the Professor of Physiology and Oncology at McGill University. He served as the inaugural director of the McGill Cancer Center, chairman of the Department of Medicine at McGill, and physician-in-chief at Montreal General Hospital, and executive director of the Clinical Research Center of the McGill University Health Center at the Montreal General Hospital. Dr. Gold is a companion of the Order of Canada, Grand Officer of the Order National du Québec, and a commander of the Order of Montreal. In 2010, he was inducted into the Canadian Medical Hall of Fame. And his name appears on a number of articles about Immunocal.
Wow. Oh, el tercero que que quiere mencionar es el doctor Phil Gold. Y el doctor Phil Gold fue profesor de medicina en el Instituto Douglas Cameron y también fue profesor de fisiología y oncología en la Universidad de McGill y ha servido como director inaugural en la Universidad de McGill, donde ahora es padrino del Centro de Cáncer y ha sido también jefe del Departamento de Medicina en la Universidad de McGill, así como también ha sido jefe de médicos en el Hospital General de Montreal y también tiene como posición o ha tenido como posición, perdón, también tiene el doctor Gold es acompañante o guía de la Orden de Canadá, en el cual es un oficial de alto mando le llaman la Orden Nacional de Quebec y también tiene otra orden alto mando en Montreal y en el 2010 ha sido condecorado o llamado al Salón de la Fama de la Medicina en Canadá. Él también ha sido un importante científico dentro de Immunotech.
So the main reason we're able to attract this type of quality in terms of the researchers down to one very important factor. That's the quality of our product, Communical. If you're working with a product that has, an effect sometimes, other times it doesn't have an effect, or the scientists behind the product are questionable, you're not going to get these types of people to collaborate with you. But the fact that we were able to marry an incredible product with top scientists and someone serious like Deeper Beer, we were able to attract these people early on. And the most important thing to a scientist is their reputation. So they're going to be very careful about who they get involved with and what product they get involved.
Y lo más importante de mencionar a estos tres científicos es que nosotros podemos decir con toda confianza y libertad de que estos científicos tienen todo el respaldo y fueron los mejores científicos para llevar a cabo la investigación de Inmunocal y que ningún otro producto en la actualidad tiene este respaldo de personas con tan alta reputación científica. Y por eso podemos decir que Inmunocal, cuando los llamamos para ser parte de Inmunotech y ser parte del desarrollo de Inmunocal, lo hicimos en un muy buen tiempo porque nadie tiene este respaldo que tiene Inmunocal y por eso estamos seguros del producto que tenemos.
So I'll give you a tip. Many times people will tell you have this great product, it does this, it does that. And so, you can use this as a way to evaluate that product. And so, one of the things I would do, I wouldn't get into an argument with the customer. I would just say, great, please send me the information. And I would look at the scientists behind those particular products. I would look at the experience of those scientists in terms of, have they published in that area? Are they experts in that field? Where was the research done? Was it done at top hospitals? Or was it done at a lab where, you can pay X amount of money and they'll generate any data you want? So that's a way to evaluate when you get people saying, well, we have a product that's equal to Immunical. Say, yeah, okay, please send me the information about the research. Send me the information about the scientists involved or the research that was done, and then compare it to what we have and the type of investigators we have.
Les voy a dar este tip, porque muchas veces vamos a encontrar personas que nos digan que tienen el mejor producto en sus manos y que te quieren convencer o hablar de un gran producto como si estuviéramos. ¿Por qué? Gracias, Berta. Y te van a querer decir que este es un gran producto o que es muy bueno. Yo te voy a recomendar que les digas, ok, dame la información que tiene tu producto y qué investigadores o qué científicos están detrás de su ciencia para poder comparar con lo que yo tengo. Y seguramente no tendrán lo que tiene Inmunocal, porque Inmunocal tiene, eso es lo que nos caracteriza, que Inmunocal tiene detrás del producto a la mejor gama de científicos, las mejores investigaciones, porque hemos invertido en ello. Pero cuando te digan que hay un mejor producto, tú puedes decirle que puedes ir a investigarlo y ver si tienen la experiencia esos científicos, tanto en el ramo. Ángeles,
Oh, sorry guys. Let me mute that person.
Entonces, lo que tienes que ver es que tengan la experiencia que tienen estos científicos de los cuales te hemos hablado, que tengan conocimiento en el ramo que se les ha pedido que se investigue, como es el de oncología, como es en el de salud de cerebro, y ver si tienen la reputación que tienen estos científicos que estuvieron detrás de la ciencia de inmunocal. Y te aseguro que no lo tendrás.
And so Heidi, if your team ever has questions, they can email you and John, and between John, yourself, and myself, we can respond to their questions. If they have a question about a product or somebody's making a claim about a product compared to a Immunical, I'm happy to help out, giving them an argument about how to discuss their product versus our product.
Thank you. Y si alguno de ustedes en nuestro equipo o en otros equipos tienen a alguien que les esté argumentando que tienen el mejor producto, por favor, siéntanse en la confianza de contactarme a mí, a John, y si necesitan interpretación, a mí, Heidi, para que les podamos dar los argumentos necesarios para defender nuestro producto, porque Inmunocal es aún mejor y podemos ayudarte a hacer la mejor argumentación.
Well, thank you, Heidi. Thank you, John. This is very impressive. And what you have now, okay, is a tool. And what is that tool? Well, that tool tells you the legacy, and this is a unique legacy, as John, so eloquently shared with us. This is a unique product. This is a product that is based on evidence rather than on anecdotal stuff. Okay, what is the difference? Well, the difference is pretty simple. Black and white, scientifically peer-reviewed studies that exist on Immunical going back to as far as 1978. Here we are in almost the end of 2023. That's what we have. So that's what tonight was about. Now, Heidi, I'm going to say a couple other things if you want to add to this. Second thing, September 5th, we're going to do another training call like this, okay, with John Molson, all right, about positioning the product, some of the different applications of the product, some of the different needs of the product, okay? And then we're going to do a third call. We'll tell you about that on the second call. So that's going to be September 5th. So if you want to put that in your notes, September 5th, we'll get a flyer and all that information together. So that's what we're doing. Now, where will this live? This tool tonight that we've all created, and especially John Molson and Heidi, you guys did a great job. Thank you so much, both of you, for your time and your due diligence to do this and share this. It's not easy in not easy in one language. It's certainly not easy in two, especially with a lot of technical information. So thank you both for your wonderful talents to present this tonight. But make a note, xyztools.com. XYZ, the last three letters in the alphabet, tools, TOOLS.com. That's Keith Hooper's website, okay? And he will take this and clean it up a little bit for us the next couple of days. So figure by, the weekend, it should be up on there. So if you say, hey, I want to go back, be it that you're in Spanish or English, you want to go back, you want to listen to some points that John made again, you want to make notes, maybe you didn't make notes tonight, maybe you just listen tonight, you want to go back, you want to put this stuff in your notebook. Make it, once it leaves what John shares, okay, once that information leaves John's brain and he gives it to you, it's now yours. It's now yours to build your business with, your enterprise with, to build your consumers with, to build your distributor base with, and also to have the ability, to share it with your downline as they grow. People are come in all the time and they have all sorts of different questions. And, where did this product come from? What's the history? Why should I take it? You have to justify sometimes the price of it, for that matter, right? It's not an inexpensive product in a difficult economy. So all that said, the more you know, the more valuable you become to your business, because when somebody has a question, you know where to go for the answer. So Heidi, I know that's a whole lot, my friend. I'll let you take a stab at that, and then we'll come back to John and we'll wrap up.
Ok, bueno, el primero que quiero resaltar aquí es que tenemos un legado único en nuestro producto, porque la evidencia que tenemos es única. Tenemos cualquiera puede decir que tiene algo, un producto, información, pero nosotros tenemos evidencia científica, estudios hechos desde 1997 hasta el día de hoy, que es 2023. El segundo punto que quiero recordarles y hacerles saber es que nuestra próxima conexión va a ser el 5 de septiembre, y también va a ser con John Molson y nos estará hablando de cómo podemos aplicar el producto del inmunocal en diferentes situaciones o necesidades. Y bueno, aquí el video va a quedar grabado, va a salir en la página de Key Cooper, y nos va a decir, nos van a avisar cuando ya esté listo. La página, si no entendí mal, es EYZ Tools, TOOLS.com. Se los pasamos en cualquiera de nuestros chats con mucho gusto. Y bueno, nos dice John Soler, este video es una herramienta que tú vas a poder utilizar para verlo constantemente e ir aprendiendo más y más de lo que Inmunocal es para nosotros, porque este producto, aunque realmente es muy económico, porque tiene un valor incomparable, es un valor que nos lo da el conocimiento del uso del producto y su historia y su fondo científico. Por esa razón, entre más conoces del producto, más es la facilidad que tienes para llegar a las personas, porque tienes la información clara y completa.
So my last word, I'm going to turn it to John for the last one. If you think about it, John's involvement from before the company was formed to this day as our research ambassador, nobody is more directly and indirectly responsible for the millions and millions and millions of dollars of product that have been sold, but also more importantly, the lives that have been impacted by Immunical. So the debt of gratitude that we, as users of this product, as well as salespeople of it, owe to John Molson is could not be defined or quantified. So I really want to thank John for his continued leadership in this area of not only getting us great research and great information, but also being willing to show up and share it with us so we can learn it, so we can apply it to our business. So with that, my friend, I'm going to turn the call to you to close out the evening.
Okay, I would like to pass on. I learned so much from Dr. Bunos and Dr. Droog working with them. And I want to pass on some very valuable advice that I learned early on, because, when you come into the scientific field and medical field, you're faced with so many questions. And what I was fascinated by is I'm working with two scientists who are world-class, who are Renaissance men. And they were the first people to say they didn't know if they didn't know the answer. So my advice to you is, when you're talking to customers, don't guess. If you don't know the answer, say, I'll get back to you. And then, get in contact with us and we'll try and get you the answer. If we don't know the answer, we'll tell you we don't know the answer, or there is no answer. So don't make up an answer on the spot. You're representing Dr. Bunos, Dr. Droog, Dr. Kovshaven, and that's how these people thought. So I'd love for you to, keep that persona and respect that, selling a product that's unique, the scientific history is unique. And so you have to be credible. Don't make up information. If you don't have the answer, find out the answer and then get back with them.
Great advice. Thank you, John. Thank you, Heidi.
You're welcome.
Gracias. Fantastico. And have a good night.
Lo último lo último que quería dar como consejo, John Molson, es que pues seamos respetuosos de lo que decimos del producto. Él aprendió de dos científicos maravillosos como el doctor Bones y el doctor Brock, y el consejo que él quiere darnos es que siempre seamos comprometidos con nuestra empresa y nuestro producto, porque estos dos científicos lo que más dijeron fue, escuché decirles, no tengo la respuesta siempre, y lo sabían reconocer, pero cuando tenían esa duda podían investigar. Así que en honor y en respeto a lo que ellos tenían por costumbre, el ser honestos, es que nosotros también hagamos lo mismo, que cuando no tengamos la respuesta, podamos decirle sinceramente a la persona, en este momento no tengo la respuesta, pero te lo voy a investigar. Y puedes venir a nosotros y nosotros podemos ayudarte. Por esa razón es que el consejo que te doy es que cuando tú no tengas la respuesta, no des una respuesta abrupta o una respuesta que te sale simple y sencillamente porque sí, es investigalo, busca la ayuda y dale ese honor al doctor Bonus y al doctor Rock y a la empresa, al producto que tanto defendieron. Gracias.
Gracias. Fantastico. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.